Hi, and welcome to News Series powered by Better Earth Theory. I'm Sharon, and today we are going to talk about the EU Plastic Directive. So, before we begin, a small bit of background. What is the European Union? So, the European Union, or EU, is a group of 27 European countries that are using the same currency, the same foreign policies, and the same security policies. They also tried to tackle a lot of big problems together, much like the United Nations from our last video. So the EU, um, they have like a lot of trade within each other, and so they're trying to control the plastic that is being used in this trade. So this is why they're creating something called their Plastic Directive. So what is it about plastic that makes them want to fix it and use less of it? Well, it's because specifically, single use plastic, or plastic that is only used one time, is pretty bad for nature. When you throw it outside, it kind of just stays there for years and years and years. A lot of plastic will last longer than a human can live. And these plastics just slowly break down and they release a lot of bad chemicals into the environment. And they sometimes get eaten back up by humans, which would not be good for your health at all. So, single use plastics is a very, very frequently used type of plastic. Like this plastic bag over here is a single use plastic. But really, the use of these plastics are often not necessary. They're just easy to use and you can just throw it away really quickly. But you don't really need it. You could use paper, you could just not package something like this phone case, and you'd be completely fine. So, this is why the EU wants to decrease the use of single use plastic. So, they had two goals in mind. One, they wanted to prevent and reduce the impact of plastic on the environment and on human health, which means that they don't want plastic to hurt people any more than they can control. So, they want to make sure that plastic doesn't hurt people and doesn't hurt the animals that are living out there, it doesn't hurt the plants, etc. The second goal is to promote a circular economy. So a circular economy is basically one where like you don't just make a something, use it, and you just throw it away. It's something where you make a product, you use it for a long time, and then you can recycle it so that it can be made into something new and used again. This makes it go in a circle, kind of like the recycling symbol, right? You make, you reuse, and then you recycle, and then you use it again. So what are the rules that the EU Plastic Directive is trying to say, trying to make us do? Well, the first thing is something called extended producer responsibility, which is kind of a fancy word, but really it just means that the people or the companies that are producing the producers of plastic need to take responsibility and deal with the plastic that they made. So that means these companies need to pay for recycling and for cleaning up the plastic that they have produced because they made money out of this, but it's hurting the environment. So now they need to take the responsibility to clean it up and to recycle it. These companies also need to label the plastic that they made. For example, they need to say that um, this plastic bottle does not use any recycled material. Then that's a label. Or maybe they just say this plastic bottle can be recycled under the label of PET. So the customers that are buying the product will know that, oh, okay, so after I finish using this thing, I'm going to throw it in the specific bin for PET bottles instead of recycling it in the wrong place or just throwing it away and not recycling at all. Second major rule is minimum recycled content. So the specific rule that they're saying is that 30% of plastic items must be made from recycled materials. Like as in, so for a given plastic bottle, 30% of it will need to be made out of recycled material. And the rest of it can be made from new plastic. But at the very, very least, 30% of it needs to be made from recycled stuff. So, for example, this plastic bag again, most of it can be made out of new plastic, but at least this part, this 30% part, it needs to be made from recycled plastics. This is how the EU is trying to make people use more recycled stuff and less new stuff. The third major rule is to separate trash collection. So this means specifically that plastic bottles need to be collected separately from other trash. So there will be a separate recycling bin just for plastic bottles. Now, why is this? This is because plastic bottles are one of the easiest plastics to recycle. It's made of PET, which which is relatively easier to recycle, and also because drinks don't are not often greasy. Like the ones that you find in plastic bottles, they're like juice or water. That's a lot cleaner and easier to wash. So they want to make sure that these easy to recycle plastic bottles get to be recycled instead of just thrown away somewhere else. That's one of the main things about recycling plastic bottles. So now you'd be thinking, wow, they made quite a lot of rules. So, do countries have to follow these rules? Well, unfortunately, not really. Yes, the EU is saying, you guys should follow this direction because this is what we think is better for the environment. And of course, you don't want to live in a trash filled country, right? So, they're saying that, okay, people should aim towards this goal. But they didn't really say what would happen if people didn't get to their goals, like the 30% that we just talked about. What if countries didn't do it? They not all of their plastic bottles are have 30% of recycled content. What would happen? Well, no one has really said anything about that yet. So, we're kind of concerned that maybe maybe people would just give up on the goal and be like, okay, too bad. We want to make money. We don't care about the environment. And then just not do the right thing. So that's something to think about. So, on that note, did this directive work? So, this is a graph, and the blue line is basically how much packaging waste was generated in the EU. And you can see that 2021 is the year that this plastic directive was um, came into force, or people needed to start following it. And so after that, we see that the waste that is generated has gone down a bit. So even though it's still higher than it was in like 2014, like all the way on the left, you can see that there has been less waste generated. When you look at the recycled graph, the yellow line down there, you'd see that after 2021, there seems to have been less waste being recycled, which is a little concerning if we think about it. So even though we've made a little less plastic, we're not recycling as much anymore. So, that's a little worrying, right? So what can we do about this? Well, first of all, we can see that plastic waste or packaging waste has been reduced. So other countries can learn from the EU, right? Some of their rules are definitely working. That's why it seems that people are using less plastic, right? However, EU will need to work on making their rules binding, meaning there will be consequences or like punishments for not following the rules. Otherwise, people might just not recycle enough and nothing would happen to them. And you know, we wouldn't be able to fix our problems, right? So those are some things that we need to consider when we're doing as we go on to the future. So thank you so much for watching this video, and let's make Earth cleaner together. Once again, this video is powered by Better Earth Theory, a youth organization dedicated to teaching our younger generation about plastic pollution and what we can do about it. I'm Sharon, and thank you for watching our video. Bye!